As I was saying, I no longer kill.
You might have a drinking problem.
Alright, full disclosure. I was gonna attempt to do this commentary without using heavy profanity, but I cannot. Even while rewatching the show a second time, my passion was way too strong to keep this video PG, and I have to let this aggression out, because this menace deserves all the smoke. So, Lestat sympathizers, this video is for you. Bring that ass here. Now this video will mainly focus on 4 people: Lestat, Louis, Claudia, and Armand. There will be mention of others, of course, but this particular video will be about how the intermingling of these 4 tragic souls culminated in the single most devastating and infuriating event of the show that left me seething with indignation and wanting everyone involved to fucking die. We will, even more specifically, be getting into why I hate this man more than anything or anyone else on the show. So this isn't really a review that's gonna get into every nitty-gritty detail of a show. No. This video has a focus. This video, at its crux, is a Lestat hate video. So let's get into it. Now, I'd heard good things about the show for a while, and I had it on my to-watch list for quite some time. I figured if I liked it or hated it enough, I'd make a commentary video, since the last time I did such a style of video for a show was when I reviewed The Idol. And oh boy, if you enjoy people trashing TV shows, go ahead and watch that train wreck. I'll link it down below. Anyway, the inspiration behind this video didn't come from me wanting to discuss the show itself and how great the writing and characters are. Though these things are true, I love the show and nearly everything about it. Yes, even the role Lestat plays in it. My hating him isn't driven by a dislike for the character's existence. He's a fundamental part of the show, he's entertaining, he's charismatic, and he needs to stay around for as long as the show lasts. I just loathe him as a person, which is actually a good thing because it means I'm emotionally invested. But the inspiration behind this video isn't even thanks to Lestat, it's thanks to his apologists. There are people who genuinely believe this man was unjustly done dirty by Louis. Some go as far as to say that Louis ruined his life. No, that's not a joke. Someone actually said that to me. Lestat is a villain and I am standing on it. And I'm not a fan of the counterpoint a lot of people have that everyone in the show is terrible either. While there may be some truth to that, there are levels to this shit. You will never convince me that Louis is on the same level of terrible as Lestat. Armand is a close second, but I have the likely unpopular opinion that Armand's actions are more justifiable than Lestat's.
Yup.
And let me make this clear, Louis isn't above criticism. My boy is a pick-me idiot for damn near the whole show and a terrible father figure. We'll touch on those things too for sure in due time, but at the end of the day, he is an abuse victim. I'm sure season 3 plans on doing a deep dive into Lestat's tragic backstory, and I want to preemptively make a point on that. Whatever he went through will never, ever justify his actions to me, because I know that's what's coming. We're gonna see him in his pain and suffering and everyone will be so empathetic. Oh no, poor Lestat, he went through so much. It sucks what Louis put him through. Shut the fuck up. I will not be moved, because unless literally everything Louis, Claudia, and Armand have revealed in their perspectives is a lie, I have no room in my heart for Lestat. But we're not there yet, so let's go with the idea that all we know now is fact, since clearly it's enough to make some of y'all deem Lestat a victim of Louis. Episode 1. Right out the gate, we know Lestat is a psychopath. This man gets hot in the britches when he sees Louis pull a knife on his brother. As the episode goes along, we see Louis and Lestat develop a relationship. They're more like acquaintances at this point, but we know Lestat has a sinister agenda, okay? And I find it so ironic that Lestat has a quote in this episode that says, "Dishonesty breeds dishonesty."
Dishonesty breeds dishonesty.
Like, yeah, okay brother, you're one to talk. Like I said before, I'm not getting into every nitty-gritty detail of these episodes, so I'm not gonna give you a play-by-play of everything that transpires in this pilot. We're gonna go ahead and skip to the part that matters most. Paul unaliving himself. Louis' brother literally ends himself in front of Louis. At this point in the story, Louis and Lestat have already had a sexual encounter. So you want to know what this man Lestat does in the wake of Paul's death? He comes pressing Louis at the funeral because Louis ain't came by to give him no more neck, pun intended. He talking about he don't take kindly to being avoided, and then had the nerve to tell Louis that his brother wanted to end himself. Bruh. And it only gets worse from there. Louis is not allowed a second to grieve. Lestat is all in his head talking about come to me, come to me. Bro, get a life. And Louis's mother isn't making it any better because she blames Louis for Paul's death. So Louis goes to see Lily, who's this woman that works at a popular brothel in town. But surprise, surprise, she's dead. Lestat, the vampire, killed her. So now Louis can't even vent to the one person left he would have felt comfortable talking to. This is not a mistake. These are very, very deliberate choices Lestat is making. So Louis goes to the confession and to finally let everything out, and here comes Lestat crashing in and crashing out, killing the priest and seducing Louis into becoming a vampire. As I said, this is all very deliberate. Lestat went out of his way to come to Louis at his most vulnerable. He's a black man in racist ass early 1900s America who already has the shittier end of the stick with these business dealings. He's gay and is struggling with accepting that his brother just offed himself, and he's barely given a moment to mourn because this motherfucker won't let him. And on top of it all, the cracks in his family are starting to show. So when Lestat offers to take Louis' pain away and give him some real power for once in his life, of course Louis will agree to it. He can hardly think. This evil bitch knew what he was doing, and he didn't tell Louis what accepting the dark gift would really entail. He didn't tell him shit, which is hilarious from Mr. Dishonesty breeds dishonesty. Then he tells Louis he loves him, and this is the beginning of a tragic, horrible, toxic relationship. Episode 2. This episode starts with Lestat trying to teach Louis a little bit on how to hunt and what to look for, blah blah blah. This leads them to a bar, which leads them to a tractor salesman, which leads to them bringing that tractor salesman back home where Louis gets his first kill. Louis feels gross about it. I don't blame you, brother. And he tries to leave before quickly learning that sunlight is his arch nemesis.
Oh! He needs some milk!
He then rejoins Lestat and they get into a coffin together. At this point, we're transported back to the present where the interview is being conducted between Louis and Malloy. Malloy, thankfully, calls Louis out on his bullshit when he says this nonsense.
I got in that coffin on my own free will. In the quiet dark, we were equals.
Okay, bro. Malloy makes a white master and black student parallel, emphasizing how ridiculous the sentiment is that Lestat and Louis were equals in the dark. Not only is it specifically silly for the era they live in, but as we all know, after 2 seasons, and what Louis should have pieced together by this point, is that they could never be equals within those circumstances. The power dynamic is too great, and we see more of this demonstrated as the show goes on. In fact, in the same episode after Louis makes an impulsive kill, they further touch on the microaggressions black people face during the time. Louis tries to tell Lestat that he doesn't understand what it's like, and Lestat is basically brushing it off while continuing to call him a fledgling, to which Louis demands he stop calling him that because it sounds like slave. Personally, I'd say it was sounding like a much harsher word beginning with N, but maybe I'm being dramatic. Regardless, Lestat is fully aware of the discrimination that Louis faces on a daily. The first words out of his mouth when he first met Louis were these.
How'd you manage to get yourself through the front door?
Excuse me?
He passes that off as a compliment, but regardless of intent, it paints the picture that Lestat is aware of Louis' struggle, at least to some degree. He calls the country primitive, makes it a point to say that the businessmen Louis deals with don't think very highly of him, and he knows it's due to Louis' race. In the same episode, they go to a theater where Louis is treated as his lowly valet. Lestat knows Louis' race plays a role in how he's treated in public, yet he acts so flippant about it because he thinks this kill is an inconvenience. I guess since Louis is a vampire now, Lestat feels all that should go out of the window, but they still live within a society, and that society will always look down on Louis. Anyway, Louis almost eats his nephew this episode, and Lestat uses that as leverage to convince Louis to stop seeing his family for good. This man is literally doing his damnness to ensure Louis stays within his clutches and only his clutches. Don't be fooled. This is absolutely what Lestat wants. This is the episode where he makes his intentions crystal clear, and it happens at the opera. He tells Louis his worst fear is loneliness, and Louis takes that fear away. They have to stay together always. Later on, Lestat kills the male opera singer for a poor performance, which Louis takes issue with. He expresses this, and Lestat shouts at him that he's a killer and needs to embrace who he is. To Lestat's credit, being a vampire does mean you're a predator. After 6 years, I'm sure Louis looking at him as if he's a monster is tiring, which he is, and not just because he's a vampire, but we'll get there. While I think Lestat is petty and needlessly extravagant in his kills, as Louis would later put it, I don't necessarily blame him for this particular outburst. But a similar theme comes up later that I do take issue with, but again, we'll get there. They go on to drain the singer together, and Louis makes it a point to tell Malloy that Lestat had a way about him. A charm that made Louis pretend to enjoy draining the man like Lestat did for fear of disappointing him. Yet another indication of the power dynamic at play here, and Malloy's white master black student analogy remains apt. These two were never going to be equals under this circumstance. Louis even admitted himself previously that there was a sort of worship on his part when it came to Lestat. Everything we've seen so far has been a red flag. Hallmarks of a toxic relationship, and people have the nerve to say Louis is as bad as Lestat. Episode 3. We're barely a minute in, and Lestat is telling Louis he put him on this earth. This bitch legitimately has a god complex, which is actually confirmed in season 2 when he tells Armand's old coven that they're all gods. He and Louis are having a conversation about hunting and who should and shouldn't be killed, mostly Louis. Lestat is still hammering home that it's instinct to hunt human, and being too picky about it is reductive, but once Louis finds a victim he'd be satisfied in killing, Lestat goes out of his way to make an abhorrent display, snapping the man's spinal cord and encouraging Louis to drink. At this point, he's being intentionally aggravating because he knows Louis dislikes when he gets extra with his kills, then has the nerve to look disgusted with Louis when he decides to eat a cat nearby, as if he didn't just do the one thing Louis wouldn't like. He later claims that Louis is ashamed of being a vampire, and this is building up to the part of the story where Lestat's attitude becomes unbearable. We flash back to the present with Louis and Malloy, and Malloy again clocking Louis as he should. He mentions the abused-abuser relationship dynamic between Louis and Lestat, to which Louis responds that he doesn't consider himself abused and he's not a victim, and yeah, let's talk about that. This idea certainly plays into the reunion between Lestat and Louis at the end of season 2, and oh boy, do I have something to say about that shit. We pick back up after Lestat hooks up with the singer Antoinette. Louis doesn't really have energy or a libido due to his diet, so Lestat's just getting it where he can. But Louis is feeling a way about this, so he asks Lestat if he's not enough, and Lestat diabolically laughs in his face. I guess it was due to the fact that Louis hadn't been putting out, and Lestat himself had concerns about their relationship, so it was likely more of a laugh of relief and delight that Louis asked that question because it confirms he wants Lestat. But Lestat goes on to say that they'll be together forever, so there's no harm in him playing around with others here and there. So then Louis asks if he can do the same, and Lestat does the most horrible job at convincing himself and the audience that he is agreeable to this.
Of course. Of course. Of course. As long as you come home to me. Of course.
And we're shown just how much he actually doesn't agree to it. Jonah, an old fling of Louis, comes back to town and they head off to the bayou to do nasty things because, again, Lestat said it's okay for Louis to play too. But it's later revealed that Lestat was present during the sexy time and had the audacity to be jealous. He blows up, saying he heard their hearts dancing and it's not the same with him and Antoinette because he doesn't have feelings for her. Like, bro, Jonah gave Louis some Gog 3000 and they went their separate ways. He's not in love with fucking Jonah. If Lestat took 2 seconds to actually use that undead brain of his, he'd have realized that if Louis' heart was dancing, it was because he was trying to keep himself from tearing Jonah apart. Then he moves the goalpost to Louis' diet again, screaming that draining animals is not a life. And this is what I meant when I said his attitude becomes unbearable. It's like, let the man figure his shit out. Yes, it's been years, but you literally have an eternity together by your own doing. You're crashing out because things aren't going your way, but your ridiculous ass should have thought about that before you took advantage of a weak, desperate, vulnerable man at the peak of his grief. Lestat is manipulative, jealous, and a control freak, and when things don't go his way, it's a problem. So the Council of White Men have been messing with Louis' business, and he reaches a breaking point. He kills Alderman Fenwick and displays his body with the "No Whites Allowed" sign that he created. Before we even get into what happens next, I had always seen the "No Whites Allowed" meme on Twitter and never knew what it was from. Imagine my pleasant surprise when I saw this scene and realized that it came from the show. Anyway, Louis killing Fenwick is one of his most gangsta moments in the show, and it's only second to a sequence we later get in season 2. This moment, however, leads to the destruction of Storyville as the white folk then begin attacking and setting fire to black homes and businesses. And you want to know the only thing that matters to Lestat in this moment? The fact that Louis killed someone. That's the only thing this man is concerned about. He's so proud that Louis got a kill, while Louis is sitting there in distress over the situation he caused. So Louis lashes out and tells Lestat that he'll always be alone. Because of course he would do that. He hit him where it hurt, but I'm sorry, am I supposed to care about Lestat's hurt feelings here? The motherfucker has been a walking red flag since he came on screen. I'm not moved. Anyway, the episode ends with Louis hearing Claudia's call for help, and he rushes into a burning building to save her. And this is the perfect stopping point to say this. Claudia is that girl, and she deserved better. I fucking love Claudia, particularly in season 1. Her addition was so perfect to me, and I understood the vision the moment she graced my screen and began her antics. The perfect wrench thrown in the middle of these two melodramatic vampire queens. I feel like people don't put enough respect on her name, and the way her run on the show ended took me over the edge. But once again, we're not there yet. Episode 4. We open with Malloy gaining access to Claudia's diaries. We officially have a perspective outside of Louis'. Part of that perspective is getting a glimpse of what happened the night Claudia was turned by Lestat. We don't get the full story from her perspective though. That comes later in season 2 with Lestat's return to Paris, but we can just address it now. With the scene further expanded on in season 2, we see Louis' desperation, his begging, his pleading for Claudia's life. He's so tunnel visioned and ridden with guilt that he completely disregards what Claudia's reality will be once she's turned, which Lestat does try to warn him about. After Louis tells Lestat he'll do and be anything, that he'll never leave him, and promises to be happy, Lestat caves, and this is where shit gets fucked up. Lestat knows that if he doesn't grant this for Louis, Louis will probably distance himself even more from Lestat, but since Lestat is so weak in the knees for Louis at this point, he doesn't want him to slip away any more than he already has. Louis knows that Lestat is pretty much willing to do anything for him, and is relying on that to get what he wants in this moment. Both these motherfuckers are using Claudia as pawns for their own agendas, and she is the one that pays the ultimate price for it. Stuck in a child's body, turbulent in emotion and behavior, designed to play daughter or sister or whatever the familial title you wish to assign her. From day one, she was doomed. And yet everything that follows from this point on still feels like such a slap in the face. So most of episode 4 explores how Claudia adapts to being a vampire and the dynamics between the three of them living together. There is a major event outside of that, being the passing of Louis' mother, but who gives a fuck about her? She sucked before Louis was a vampire. But Louis has an unpleasant interaction with his sister Grace and her husband Levy that I want to touch on a bit more later. I've seen comments regarding his family that most people seem to be on one accord with, but I find myself disagreeing. So yeah, prepare yourself for another unpopular opinion, I guess. Anyway, we reach the point in the story where Claudia is a few years older and is having more mature thoughts and urges, and she meets a boy named Charlie. Long story short, it doesn't end well.
Charlie?
This event fucks Claudia up badly, and it shows. In episode 5, we see something in Claudia's psyche collapse. She hurts herself. She goes on a killing spree, writing down her victim's last words in her diary like some sadist. It's truly something to behold. All of this puts a real strain on Louis and Lestat when it culminates in the bodies of Claudia's 56 victims resurfacing during a storm. Sister was on a roll, you hear me? There's a growing concern within the community that Louis and Lestat are dancing with the devil, so of course they're suspected of being involved. Police show up at their home to do a search and come up with nothing, but not before threatening to throw their gay asses in jail for being gay. We get a lovely scene of Claudia being reprimanded by Louis and Lestat for keeping body parts and shit in the house, during which Lestat makes a comment about how happy he and Louis were before she came along, to which both Louis and myself disagree that they were ever really happy. Like, this is how delusional this man is. Louis was ready to leave your ass, bro. Shut up. Claudia goes on to express her contempt. She's stuck in a 14-year-old body. Who's gonna want her 20, 30, 40 years from now? Little boys and perverts. This highlights just how short-sighted Louis was when bringing her to Lestat. He used her to fill a void and didn't give a fuck how it affected her even after Lestat warned him. You'd think after this he'd make more of an effort to do right by Claudia after the years she spends away from them, but as I said near the beginning of this video, Louis is a shit father figure and he will be getting his lashings for it. But Claudia, being the queen she is, calls out Lestat for treating them like shit and exposes him for the lying, cheating bastard he is, telling Louis that he's still seeing Antoinette. Let me remind the audience that this is the same man who was popping a blood vessel cause Louis got some head once at the bayou. It's things like this that make me really side-eye comments like this, like truly baffling me. Lestat apologists refuse to truly hold this man accountable for anything. The idea that Claudia and Louis were being ungrateful to Lestat as if he did them some huge favor, that they were emotionally abusive, are we being serious? We are 5 episodes in, and I have yet to see what makes Louis so bad for Lestat, aside from maybe using a bit of manipulation to get Lestat to turn Claudia. But even then, Lestat knew better and shouldn't have done it if he thought better of it. Yeah, Louis might have been mad at him for a while, but Louis can't stand on his own for shit. He would have come crawling back to Lestat eventually, like he always does. And even if we took that out of the equation, Louis' manipulation at that point still doesn't compare to everything Lestat has done, period. So Lestat says he'll kill Antoinette, which we all know he never does. In fact, their affair continues for several more years, and it's just... I guess I can give him a pass for that since Louis wants nothing to do with him for the next 7 years after Claudia leaves, but it's still pathetic to be so jealous and controlling while indulging in your own affairs. So yeah, Claudia takes off after rightfully telling Louis off for what he and Lestat did to her, which ushers in an era of Louis being emotionally closed off to Lestat. Again, rightfully so, because all he can think about is Claudia and how they ruined her. He longs and aches for her, which is really fucking confounding because again, I have to say that after all that pining for her to come back, you'd think he'd be a better figure to her upon her eventual return. But it's not the case because, above all else, Louis is a pick-me idiot for most of the show. While Louis is marinating in self-pity and making petty jabs at Lestat, Claudia runs into another vampire named Bruce. Long story short, he assaults her and never gets his head chopped off for it. Hopefully season 3 blesses us with that. But yeah, not a good time for Claudia. But there is a moment in this episode that I actually lived for, and it's when Malloy slapped the shit out of Louis for fucking with his Parkinson's. I know some people find Malloy annoying, and admittedly his insistence on wanting to read the details on Claudia's assault is questionable at the very least, but I just love him as a foil to Louis and later on Armand's bullshit. Yeah, he was crossing a line, but Louis crossed a worse one if you ask me, so I'm fully on board with Daniel's get back and not giving a fuck that Louis is a vampire.
I'ma just scoot on over and let you whack him. Get him again. Get him for me.
We catch up with Grace in this episode too, and she has a tombstone with Louis' name on it. She does this because in order for her to move on with her life, she essentially has to kill the idea of him and let him go. Now this is the part where I want to talk about Louis' family and what I disagree with concerning people's response to them. If you search for the clip on YouTube where Louis stops by the house to drop off gifts for the twins, in that comment section you will see a plethora of people condemning the family for how they treat him. Now Florence, I understand. She's horrible and blame Louis for Paul's death. Fuck her. but I have a hard time understanding why y'all don't understand the perspective of the rest of the family. Ever since Lestat came into Louis' life, he stopped coming around as much, and when he did, it was months or years in between. He misses birthdays, christenings, and on top of that, the motherfucker don't age at all. That's spooky. It makes perfect sense that they would be terrified of him and don't want him around, even more so when he kicks a fucking door and it goes flying. I saw a comment from someone that said Grace was dead to them once she referred to Lestat as Louis' white daddy at the mom's funeral, but like, that's accurate. As far as Grace is concerned, Lestat came in and completely snatched her brother away, making him essentially abandon his family. And people have the nerve to call his family ungrateful because he's still paying the bills and they're living in a house under his name. This fandom and their misguided use of the word ungrateful needs to be studied. But be so fucking for real. The last time we see Grace with Louis, he almost eats his nephew, then leaves him lying on the living room floor. They don't have to be happy and welcoming when he comes around after the shit he's pulling just cause he can flash some cash. If I was Grace, I'd be done with this motherfucker too. And let's understand something here. Louis' family has suspicions about Louis' sexuality in the first place. It's confirmed when Paul asks what Lestat's relationship to Louis is in the very first episode, and they all kind of give a look because they know what he's really asking. But Grace was the one who insisted Louis bring Lestat to dinner in the first place. I think she already had an idea of what was going on between them and was ready to accept it. But what she wasn't ready for was Lestat taking Louis from the family, and that's where the resentment built up. So as far as I'm concerned, Grace is completely justified in her feelings and is completely justified in letting Louis go. Lestat is the blame, Lestat is the villain, he's the white devil, Louis' family did nothing wrong. Except Florence. Fuck Florence. All my homies hate Florence. Now since that's all out of the way, let's get into the real bullshit. AKA the moment I was officially done with Lestat. Everything up to this point that I'm about to go over had been toxic and frustrating, but under the right circumstances, there could have been room in my heart to forgive Lestat. Not excuse him, but there was certainly some room for redemption. Not anymore, and certainly not after season 2. Claudia comes back after years away, but she's not here to stay. She came back for Louis, to encourage him to come with her and leave the country to find others like them. Of course, Lestat's bitch ass doesn't like that too much, especially since it appears Louis is actually considering the invitation, so he attacks Claudia. But my man Louis ain't having that shit, so he tackles Lestat and they get to thumping. And from this perspective, it looks like Louis is getting his ass kicked a little bit, but in season 2, we see more of the action and he's putting hands on Lestat too, but only because Lestat is restraining himself. Lestat being more powerful than Louis and showing restraint when it comes to fighting him because he doesn't want to fight him, I guess for a lot of people drastically changed how they see Louis in this situation. Louis was doing some damage on top of talking mad shit. Mans went into great detail about how he was gonna kill Lestat, feed his head to lions and laugh about it. My boy was fed up. But my question to you all is, does he not have the right to be? Does he not have the right to want to take this man's head off? At the end of the day, Louis was defending Claudia. That is a fact. In what world does this revelation change that? Louis finally puts up a fight and suddenly he's the bad guy? He's wrong because he hurt Lestat's little feelings after Lestat put his hands around Claudia's neck? I'm convinced anyone who defends Lestat is just as delusional as he is. Respectfully. And now we come to the true fuckery of the episode. Lestat drags Louis outside by the jugular and flies into the air with him. He gives his bitch boy speech about how much he's waited on Louis to love him, but Louis ain't trying to hear none of that shit, and he tells Lestat to let him go. And bitch ass Lestat does just that. He drops Louis from 1,000+ feet in the air, leaving him crippled with a punctured lung and blind in one eye. I hate Lestat. But I think what I hate even more are Lestat apologists, because if you can watch this and still defend him and still think Louis had it coming and still think that he was somewhat justified, you're a lost cause. Fuck Lestat and the bitch that gave birth to him. Episode 6 starts with Louis doing more of his pick-me shit. Malloy makes a dig at him for his rationalizing of Lestat's behavior, and Louis' response is to ask if we're the sum of our worst moments and can we not be forgiven. Cue the fucking eye roll, brother. I've said it before and I'll say it again. There's levels to this shit. My worst moments could be stealing $100 from my mother's purse once. Lestat's worst moment up to this point is dropping you from the sky. These are not comparable situations, so miss me with that shit, Louis. Some things you just can't come back from, and even if you can find it within yourself to forgive someone for the worst shit they've done to you, that doesn't mean they get to be part of your life and deserve some kind of reconciliation. Don't worry, I will get there. Back to the past. Claudia is spending a lot of her time rehabilitating Louis, and during that time they receive many gifts and phone calls from the bitch boy Lestat. He even buys a car for Louis. It's very clear that Louis is struggling with his feelings for Lestat, because when Lestat says all Louis has to do is tell him to leave him alone, he doesn't do it. This motherfucker is just as weak in the knees as Lestat. He comes back talking about Louis' silence is cruel. Bro, the nerve. You know what's cruel? Dropping someone you supposedly love from the sky because they were on the verge of leaving your ass. But eventually Louis caves. Lestat makes a record for him with Antoinette's vocals on it, and it sets Louis off. It's guys that's him confronting Lestat in order to tell him off, but he was really just super horny for him at this point. He ain't had no toxic devil dick in 6 years and he needed his fix. Simple as that. And I don't care for Antoinette, but these dudes dismiss her from her own bed, in her own bedroom, in her own house, and proceed to get freaky. Antoinette girl, you are the most professional side piece.
Stand up!
Louis says it's the vampire bond or whatever, but I find it really hard to care about that. I still find him dumb for dealing with Lestat, a trend that doesn't get old anytime soon. So Lestat's back in the house and they lay down ground rules. One of said rules is Lestat is to kill Antoinette. Spoiler alert, he doesn't. And another rule is for him to no longer lie or keep secrets. This is where we get some insight into Lestat's maker Magnus. He tells the story of how Magnus kept him hostage, turned him, then killed himself. But because Lestat is a lying ass liar, I don't know if I even believe half the shit he tells them. During this period, we see the dysfunctional dynamic between these three vampires living together, and I love the fact that Claudia never takes her foot off Lestat's neck. She is genuinely my favorite character this season because she's the only one with some damn sense outside of Malloy. She rightfully refers to Lestat as massa, and Louis gets his panties in a bunch over it, but like, she's right. Lestat has a complete hold on Louis and Louis just allows it. They catch Lestat with Antoinette and he chooses not to confront him about it because he knows it won't change anything. He's still going to stay with Lestat. He is whipped, which is a very unfortunate word to utilize here given the context, but again, it's accurate. White massa got him whipped. Claudia finally resolves herself to run away again and begs Louis to come with her once more, but of course he doesn't. He'd rather be miserable with Lestat than miserable with Claudia. He sees her off and she goes to catch a train. But Lestat, the oh so caring boyfriend he is, knows that Louis will sink right back into that depression and it'll be a repeat of the 7 years without Claudia all over again. So he goes to get her. He kills the workers on the train, forces her to come back by threatening her, and weaponizes her assault against her. And y'all expect me to believe this man is not the villain, that he isn't completely abhorrent? This is y'all's king? This is who y'all will die defending? Get the fuck out of here. Louis literally contemplating staying on the bench until sunrise to off himself because that was a more desirable outcome in the moment than being with Lestat. And this all leads to Claudia's resolve to murder that man. She literally tried to get away and he brought her back. She's trapped. She wants to be free. And the only way she can do it now is to rid the earth of the scorch that is Lestat de Lioncourt. The chess game between she and Lestat is the perfect representation of the relationship and a great foreshadow of what's to come. Lestat crashing out because Claudia refused to finish the game with him is gold. I'll forever love her. She deserved better. And now we've reached the finale, episode 7. I don't have much to say about this episode aside from the fact that I was slightly worried Claudia's plan would fail, but I just knew my girl had something else up her sleeve and she did not disappoint. Louis, on the other hand, yeah, I'm about to whack his ass. So the basic plot of this episode is Claudia comes up with a plan to throw a party. A last hurrah as the trio is set to finally leave New Orleans because they've been there too long. But it's all a veil. The true agenda is to kill Lestat and the party is one massive front. She keeps Louis in the dark on the details but does tell him to give his all to Lestat as the performance needs to be convincing. And when the time is right, she'll pull him out of it and deal the blow. So it goes. During the party, they handpick some guests to entice with the gift of maintaining youth. Among those guests are a couple of twin boys, one of which Claudia poisons with a mixture of laudanum and arsenic. The audience is led to believe that this will be the boy Lestat feeds on, and once he does, the poison in his bloodstream will leave Lestat incapacitated and vulnerable enough to kill once and for all. Before we get to that point, there's an amazing scene between Louis and Lestat on the balcony, which then leads to them dancing together in front of everyone, which then leads to a kiss, and for all the complaining I've done, I can't deny that these two have superb chemistry. It's not revealed yet, though I had suspicions, but the fact that Lestat is aware that they're planning something at this point adds an air of devastation to these scenes with Louis. You almost feel bad for him, cause that's how they get you. I'm telling you, I've stood on Lestat being a terrible person for the longest, but it's hard not to get suckered into that charismatic flair he has. His very aura lures you in. That's what makes him dangerous. And to drive that point home, Louis is ready to call off the plan by the time their dance is over, but it's too late. Claudia has already set everything in motion. So everything is set up. The party is over, they have their select guests still remaining, and they attack. Looking very badass while doing so, might I add. It's a bloodbath. They've been fasting for days. Louis literally rips a man's jaw off. He ain't have to do that shit. Then finally we're at the point where Lestat is to drain the tainted twin, but he stalls because of course he knows of the plan. In a non-surprising twist, Antoinette is still around and she's now a vampire, and she's been following Louis and Claudia, listening to them speak telepathically and plan all this out. To be fair though, my suspicion was that Lestat could actually read both their minds on his own and fully expected that to be another secret he was keeping, and it was a lie that makers can't read the minds of those that they turn into vampires. But no, I guess that's really true, which is why he needed Antoinette. Congratulations Lestat, you're 1 for 1,000 on truths you've told versus lies. Good for you. Now Lestat and Antoinette want to kill Claudia, with Lestat claiming that Antoinette would be much more agreeable to a life with him and Louis. But unfortunately for Lestat, Claudia is not a dumbass. He pukes blood because lo and behold, Claudia made sure to poison Tom Anderson, knowing Lestat will want to drain him for his slights. And of course, he was the first person Lestat attacked and drank blood from. So Lestat's down, and Antoinette goes down next. It's up to Louis to end this now. He goes to do it while Lestat is still telling him sweet nothings, and then it's done. He slits Lestat's throat. Yeah, I knew that motherfucker wasn't dead. We were told very explicitly the things that could kill a vampire. A slit throat was not one of them. The head needs to be fully cut off. But obviously Louis knows that. He didn't want Lestat to die. He's an abuse victim who's still attached to his abuser. He left an opening for Lestat, refusing to burn his body when Claudia wanted to, and doing the very thing to her that he attacked Lestat for. He wrapped his skinny, gnarly little fingers around her neck and slammed her against a wall. Louis, you bitch ass lip dick, pick me, poor excuse for a parental figure. This dude can't stand on business for more than 2 seconds when it comes to Lestat, bro. He even tried to tell Malloy that neither he nor Claudia could bring themselves to burn Lestat like they did Antoinette, but Malloy knows that's bullshit, cause Claudia hated Lestat so much she wrote his final words in her diary using his own blood. Sister was a savage. She didn't give a fuck about burning him, but alas, they simply stuffed his body in a trunk, left it with the garbage, and that was that. Louis proving himself once again to be terrible for Claudia. Lestat would be taken to the dump where there are rats readily available for his consumption, teasing his return for season 2. Oh, and we also get the reveal that Rashid, who is actually Armand, is an ancient vampire and is, quote, the love of Louis' life. Where's my belt? Louis needs an ass whooping. Now we're on to season 2, and if the events of season 1 weren't enough to make you hate Lestat, don't worry, I got more in the clip. I won't be going episode by episode for this season because I don't think it's necessary. I did that for season 1 because we were exploring Louis and Lestat's relationship each episode of that season, but Louis doesn't even see Lestat again outside of hallucinations until episode 7 of season 2, so we're just gonna go through a rundown and my general thoughts. So, enter Armand. Where do I even begin? I've seen so many people call Armand a master manipulator as if Lestat isn't, or use the fact that he and Louis didn't talk about Claudia for 77 years as some sort of reasoning to justify the idea that he's wrong for Louis and he should be with Lestat instead. Let me tell y'all something. Louis don't need to be with either one of these motherfuckers, okay? Louis needs to be single for at least a century so he can find himself, and I'm so serious. Louis shouldn't have wanted anything to do with Armand for the fact that Armand arranged for Louis, Claudia, and Madeline to get snatched up by the Coven in the first place. Do you know how heated I was to see that shit happen and then flash forward to the present to see this man sitting in Louis' presence? Bitch, I will hop through the screen. But how did we get to that point? Long story short, Armand's the rebound and constantly going back and forth on whether or not that's an acceptable position for him to play. Louis and Claudia arrive in Paris after years of traveling and experiencing war. Armand approaches them, and once they're made aware of the Coven, they go and check things out. But it's not long before the Coven begins getting antsy about Louis not being an official member. Claudia is all for it and feels right at home for a time, but Louis would rather maintain his independence. To be honest, Claudia's overwhelming desire to be part of something like the Coven is understandable at first, but I feel like once they found out about Lestat being the co-founder of the theater, it should have been a different story. This is the same Claudia that took Lestat down. She's cunning, she's intelligent, she's a strategist, and more than anything between Bruce and Lestat, she knows what dangerous vampires look like. She was such a badass in season 1, and it kind of feels a bit like a character regression in season 2 how willing she was to stay in Paris despite the signs that this was gonna go horribly wrong. Funnily enough, Louis is the one who seems more concerned about this at first, but later on the roles reverse. But at that point, Louis is the one who wants to stay because he finds some fragile comfortability with Armand and refuses to leave Paris. And I get it, Claudia's search for companionship among other vampires is compelling and a driving force of her character. She encounters some vampires that seem like they got it good and wants to be part of that. I get it. But after all they went through with Lestat, to have a gang of vampires basically imply you have to join them or there will be consequences, a gang of vampires whose production was co-founded by Lestat, Paris should have been made a bump in the road on the way to their next destination. Anyway, bitch made discount Lestat, otherwise known as Francis, I mean Santiago, leads the charge in pressuring Armand to execute Louis after Claudia is confirmed, and Armand seems to reluctantly go along with this at first. He and Louis did have a budding situationship thing going on, but because Louis isn't committing to neither him or the Coven, it's a sticky situation and he has to make a choice. This is where I feel like I may lose a lot of you, because while I don't want Louis with Armand, and while I despise the Coven and their frail laws that most of them I'm sure don't even adhere to, this is one of Armand's actions that I feel like you can somewhat justify. He doesn't know Louis for real. As far as he and the Coven know, Louis is gonna mess everything up for them. He literally killed someone thinking it was Lestat and left the body there. So why would Armand risk his standing in the Coven for a man he just met that quickly? At least that would be my argument if he had gone through with killing Louis, but Armand is also weak in the knees and decides he likes Louis enough for some reason to not go through with killing him. I'm not rooting for Louis' death or anything, I'm just saying what would make sense in this vampire world as far as the regulations they impose on themselves. So no, it wouldn't be some grand betrayal if Armand handles business here. That's not to say Armand doesn't make heinous manipulative decisions. He knows about Lestat and he uses that secret as leverage against Louis to get him to appease the Coven. He wipes Louis' memories and claims Louis asked for it. We'll see about that. He lied about directing the mock trial in episode 7 and took credit for saving Louis by the end of it when it was really Lestat's doing. And by the way, Lestat don't get no cool points from me for saving Louis, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Armand isn't innocent. He is another pathetic broken soul in this concoction of pathetic broken souls doing deplorable shit for the sake of ego, cowardice, and a misguided sense of love. I'm not even sure he and Louis actually loved each other. In fact, I'd bet if he came face to face with Lestat again, he wanna be all over that, just like Louis, cause apparently Lestat is Big Dick McGee and got all these men hooked. There's some stuff with Malloy and what happened back in the original interview in 1973. Armand's treatment of Malloy after saving him from Louis is pretty telling and helps paint a glaring picture. He and Louis could never last. There was too much left unsaid between them, too many feelings left unregulated, and unfortunately Malloy became collateral damage since Armand chose to hold him captive after Louis' attempt to unalive himself. This poor guy, bro. Somebody help him. I know I've been calling Louis dumb and stuff, but it's actually tough love. I love Louis. I want the best for him, and seeing him in that headspace definitely affected me. Episode 5 is so poignant and does an excellent job at showcasing Louis' vulnerability and Armand's volatility. Armand was so upset with Louis and took out his aggression on Malloy. Aggression built up because of the underlying truth within he and Louis' relationship. Lestat will always be present, and what happened in Paris will always be present. Speaking of which, I think it's time we get to that. The bane of my existence, the worst part of the show that solidified my hatred. So the weak-ass coven were being a bunch of haters and rounded up Louis, Claudia, and Madeline. Claudia and Madeline were allowed some happiness for all of 2 minutes before some fuckery hit once again, and Armand spearheaded this. He was the director and tried to act like he wasn't involved until Malloy set things straight in the present, but regardless, he still sold them out to the coven, director or not. Again, why Louis would be sitting next to this man based on that fact alone is beyond me. It shouldn't matter that Louis believed Armand saved him at first. What happens here is a direct result of Armand's involvement in deceit. He chose the coven over Louis. By the way, I 100% believe he could have genuinely saved Claudia and Louis if he wanted to. And I'd still make the argument that his actions here make far more sense than Lestat's. Ooh, Lestat. This is it. This is the moment where Lestat crossed the line in which there was absolutely no return for me. This bitch gets on a stage and manipulates the hell out of the story. He tells a bunch of lies and half-truths. My blood was boiling watching this. I know people really love this episode, but I couldn't stand it. To watch him be up there spitting his bullshit pissed me off. No, I don't care that Louis was beating his ass after he put his hands on Claudia. I don't care that the thought of being a lonely vampire puts him in distress. I don't care that Louis was being unreasonable in his demanding that Lestat turn Claudia. All Lestat had to do was not turn Claudia. He was vehemently against it, even when Louis didn't care about Claudia's well-being in his selfishness. Louis was completely in the wrong for how he was handling that situation, but he's still not on Lestat's level of terrible. I feel like this episode makes an attempt at painting Lestat in a more favorable manner when it comes to Louis' minor transgressions, but you will never convince me that any of this paints Louis as some horrible person who mistreated Lestat. Never, never, never. But oh, Lestat does take some accountability and apologizes to Louis at some point. That should count for something, right?
Wrong answer, forehead.
Nope, I couldn't care less for his apologies because they're immediately undermined by what comes next, and we all know what it is. Claudia's death. Yeah, they killed my girl. Her and Madeline are exposed to the sun and they disintegrate, and it's the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. And you know what that bitch ass Lestat had the nerve to stand there and do? This monster cries. He stands there crying, acting all heartbroken over a murder he just helped cause. This is why Armand could never be worse than Lestat to me, because while y'all are so mad at Armand for his lies and his involvement in the play, it's like you overlook the crucial fact that Lestat is Louis and Claudia's maker. There's so much talk about the vampire bond, but that bond didn't stop his ass from crossing the whole ocean to put on a production that would lead to Claudia's death. That bond didn't mean shit the entire time the three of them were living together. I don't care what the books say. Why would I give grace to him for feeling bad now that the avoidable damage is done? Oh, but Lestat isn't powerful enough to save Claudia and Louis, right? He was bleeding when he saved Louis. There's no way he'd have the power to save Claudia too, even if that was true, and I'm not totally definitively convinced, but even if it is, what excuse do you have for him being an active participant in this farce of a trial, telling lies and omitting details to make the vampires he made look like the bad guys? He knows the end goal here. They rehearsed this production in secret. If it was about coming to save Louis after the Coven made contact with him, why not warn Louis when he got to Paris before the Coven captured all of them? Scratch that, why not warn Louis and Claudia, since you people are so convinced he also loved Claudia and her death put him in despair? You have people saying that he didn't want to be there, that he hated doing this. So why was he? This was avoidable. And look, even if he did feel bad, even if he did love her, even if his heart aches for her after the fact, his actions don't reflect that. They don't make sense. He's a vain, narcissistic, evil-ass manipulator. He spent 2 decades with Louis and Claudia. Armand didn't, the Coven didn't, he did, and he still does this. So again, why do some of you still insist that he's not the bad guy, or Claudia and Louis are on the same level, or Armand is worse? None of this makes sense to me. It's baffling that I'll come across posts like this, acting as if Armand is unforgivable, but Lestat has some redeeming qualities. Redeeming qualities? What redeeming qualities? What, him feeling bad after he did despicable shit? He finally took some responsibility on stage for all the shit he caused while still touting lies? I'm supposed to give him a cookie for that? I'd rather y'all just admit you defend him because he has a nice jawline. The mental gymnastics here are insane. And the response to this post is annoying because they're flat out admitting that Lestat played a part in Claudia's death, who for a time he played a parental figure to, but because he regrets it, he's more redeemable than Armand, who never gave us a reason to think he cared about Claudia in the first place. Why should I care that he doesn't express remorse for it? He's a demon who was prepared to stick with his Coven, but Lestat's worse, cause that was his damn daughter, and I don't care how you want to flip it. I was so upset after this episode. I wanted everyone dead. Lestat, Armand, Francis, the whole entire Coven, and yes, even Louis to an extent, because he could have left Paris with Claudia, but he refused. And for who? Armand? This man gets so digmatized, it's not funny. Speaking of digmatized, that right there is what pisses me off about the finale. Aside from getting the satisfaction of seeing most of the Coven be murdered by Louis after they were gonna let him starve to death, which is his most gangsta moment by far, I loved that entire sequence. But aside from that, it's as if what Lestat did gets brushed under the rug because he saved Louis and he's a sad boy now. Oh, Armand lied for 70+ years about the fact that he was prepared to let them both die. Cool, he's disgusting, but that doesn't change the fact that Lestat is worse. But for Louis it does apparently. He tells Lestat that he was the selfish one and tried to make nights awful for him because he didn't recognize vampirism as a gift. Then he thanks him. Bro, you were isolated from your family. Your brother died and he preyed on you in the middle of it. Didn't allow you a single moment to grieve in peace. He cheated on you the whole time you were together. He dropped you from the sky after he attacked Claudia. What are you thanking him for? See, this is that pick-me shit I be talking about. He's running back to his abuser and essentially apologizing for how he reacted to the abuse. Then he goes on to say Claudia's death wasn't on Lestat. Is he being for real? He takes the blame for bringing Claudia to Lestat in the first place, and while that does have some merit and he does share some blame, Lestat has the bulk of it in every category. I hate these people. Now don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful scene with beautiful performances by Jacob Anderson and Sam Reed. I can understand why it would bring people to tears, but at the end of the day, I see through this bullshit. You know what? I'm over it. There you have it, folks. All the reasons why I hate Lestat and believe he is the villain. As I said before, it's good that I feel strongly about this. It's actually a testament to the show being incredible. It's an incredible show with incredible acting, incredible writing, and tells an incredible story. My hate for Lestat doesn't take any of that away. I just want people to be serious when it comes to this evil bastard. As it stands, I don't forgive him for shit, and that's just that on that. I welcome conversation in the comment section. It would be interesting to see how some of you inevitably continue to defend him, so do your best. What do you disagree with? Do I have something wrong? Let's talk about it. Until then, this is Said by Ty, and I said what I said. Bye.